Unboxing and discussing. I Spit on Your Grave, I Spit on Your Grave Deja Vu. A little bit of talk about the I Spit on Your Grave trilogy of remakes. But generally, let's just talk about what these movies are. But first, let's see what came in the box, because I literally haven't opened this yet. I got the Ronin Flicks Special Deluxe Edition right here. Open that. Let's see what this is. Okay. Cool. Movie. It's a nice little presentation here. Like when you order chocolate or something. So it's got that. Take that out. The actual Blu-ray box there. The I Spit on Your Grave, I Spit on Your Grave Deja Vu, and the documentary Growing Up with I Spit on Your Grave. I have no idea what that is, although I knew it came with it. I pretty much just got this because my copy's kind of damaged, and it's a really cool looking box set. Also, it came with other stuff. It came with posters. We got the original film's poster. And interesting thing about this, that is not Camille Keaton, who starred in I Spit on Your Grave. That is Demi Moore, the former Mrs. Bruce Willis, or former Mrs. Ashton Kutcher. But yeah, they hired Demi Moore back when she was a model to do this little shot. I could tell that wasn't Camille Keaton. That's not her body type. She's a very slender woman. Demi Moore was actually a very full-figured woman. If you saw Striptease, you know that. But yeah, so that's actually Demi Moore on the poster for I Spit on Your Grave, the original film. And the poster for the sequel, Deja Vu, which is Jamie Bernadette. These are quad folded posters, so you do have the fold marks on them, which some people like. I thought this was a pretty cool poster, honestly. I actually like this a little bit more than the original poster, honestly. Especially because it's actually the actress that stars in the movie. And it came with magnets. For both films. I don't know why, I just kind of like playing with magnets. So I was kind of excited about that. Yeah, so I Spit on Your Grave.
Take off your clothes.
I don't like women giving me orders.
I spit on your grave. What you are about to see did happen.
I Spit on Your Grave. So you may notice a weird jump there. That's because I did the unboxing. Decided I wasn't happy with talking about the movies because I hadn't watched them in a while. So I watched the movies, I watched the special features, now I can talk about it. So what I did was, one of the main reasons I wanted this collection was actually that I wanted to upgrade my I Spit on Your Grave Blu-ray, which had been damaged, which I've recently learned is actually a collector's item now because apparently it went out of print pretty quickly, so that was stupid. But I should have taken better care of that since it's going for like $80 online. But yeah, so I wanted to replace that, and I wanted I Spit on Your Grave Deja Vu, not because it's a good movie, because it's a terrible movie, but because I wanted Joe Bob Briggs commentary. I love Joe Bob Briggs, Monster Vision, The Last Drive-In, currently on Shudder. I think the guy's a trip, and I really wanted his commentary on it. I thought it would be pretty funny to hear him try to, and I was curious if he would try to defend it or not. He stops just shy of trashing the movie, but you can tell he knows it's a bad movie, so he's kind of tap dancing around that since they are paying him to talk about this movie, but he knows the movie's trash. If I were to guess if he put his star rating on it, which he didn't, I'd say it probably would be 2 stars for him. And keep in mind, Joe Bob rarely goes below 2 stars. If he is even moderately amused by a movie, he'll go 2 stars. And then the documentary that came with it, Living with I Spit on Your Grave, which gives you so much information about, in between these original special features poured over from the original Blu-ray, the commentaries from the original Blu-ray, the commentaries on Deja Vu, the behind the scenes on Deja Vu, and the feature-length documentary. You basically have a doctorate on this movie by the time you've gone through all these special features. So I would say this is really a must for the diehard fans. It is. It's tons of trivia, tons of talk. good explanation of why, and a pretty decent argument for why could be considered the most controversial. The original "I Spit on Your Grave" could be considered the most controversial movie of all time. It was studios wouldn't touch it. No one would distribute it for years. When it finally did get distributed, it was almost immediately pulled by theaters due to a moral outrage. The moral outrage being led largely by Siskel and Ebert, the legendary film critics, the guys who did the binary movie review. Thumbs up, thumbs down. That's it. And that was them. That was their whole gimmick. And they hated I Spit on Your Grave. They called it the worst movie of the year it was released. And Roger Ebert, for decades to come, continued to say I Spit on Your Grave was the worst movie he'd ever made, because apparently he forgot he'd seen any other movies. Because this isn't a bad movie. It's a matter of taste. Saying that I Spit on Your Grave is a bad movie is ridiculous. It's well made. It's well shot. It's generally well acted. There's really not a lot to criticize about this movie except if you disapprove of its content. It's a very smart, well-made character study about a woman who is brutalized and gets revenge, and essentially she turns her sexuality on the people that raped her. And I think that's a very interesting way of looking at that scenario, that this is a career woman, this is an author, played by Camille Keaton, phenomenal Camille Keaton, who sadly didn't do very much else. But Camille Keaton, she did have a few minor movies in the 70s. Apparently, a movie she did in Italy called What Have You Done to Solange was fairly well received, although I've never seen that. And another Italian movie called Tragic Ceremony I actually want to see, because the premise sounds cool. But yeah, she didn't do a whole lot outside of this. And there's, of course, Meyer Zarki did almost nothing outside of this movie in the film industry. He did a movie called Don't Mess With My Sister, which was ridiculously hard to find. The DVD was out of print. It was stupid expensive. When I finally got a hold of a copy, I found it in one of those used DVD stores where it was like $8 because they didn't know it was a collector's item. As far as they knew, it was just some random old dip DVD. And I watched it. I was so excited, and that movie's, it's not even bad. It's just instantly forgettable. I cannot remember a single thing about that movie, and I watched it twice. But so he did Don't Mess With My Sister, then basically nothing forever until I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu, which is a movie that happened for a few reasons, and it's a disaster. But so the original I Spit on Your Grave is a fantastic flick. Of course, originally it's called Day of the Woman, and it was originally released in a very limited venue, in a very limited number of venues as Day of the Woman. Now, Day of the Woman isn't a great title. It doesn't tell you enough about the movie, and it sounds more like it's either going to be a courtroom drama maybe, or a action movie, neither of which I Spit on Your Grave is. Now, I Spit on Your Grave is a title that most of the people involved in the production hated, including the director. He doesn't even call it I Spit on Your Grave. He still wants to call it Day of the Woman. And I imagine it must have killed him calling the sequel I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu. But that title was chosen by its distributor. And it's not a great title either, because I didn't think about this until I listened to some of the negative reviews, that I Spit on Your Grave puts you in mind that you're going to watch a comedy. You know, it makes you think that, oh, this is going to be kind of jokey, that this is going to be kind of slapsticky. And it's not at all. There is so little humor in this movie. It is a very dark, grim, straightforward film. And one of the more interesting things that Meyer Zarki did as a director in this movie is he is very dispassionate. He points the camera at something and lets it happen. The movie has no score. The only music is music originating from the film itself, meaning either someone's listening to a radio or the guy playing the harmonica. That's the only music in the movie, when she plays the phonograph, also the record player. But yeah, so it's very much a movie that wants to sit back and let you decide how you feel about this. And one of the interesting things that happened to viewers in some of the old grindhouses, and I'm sure on home video as well, is that this is a movie that almost tricks some of the more misogynistic viewers into rooting for the rapist before seeing them get their comeuppance. That was something that some critics criticized this movie heavily for, as they said, well, there were people in the audience cheering the rapist on. But those same critics also acknowledge, yeah, and those people were dead-ass silent when people start getting their dicks cut off. So I think that almost in a way I Spit on Your Grave was a good title, because it forces people to look at something. It draws a certain kind of audience and then forces them to look at the reality of what they were maybe not taking seriously initially. Like, Yeah, the story is very simple. It is pure rape revenge. Rape revenge films are a subgenre that was never especially prevalent. It kind of started more or less with Ingmar Bergman's The Virgin Springs, which itself was copied, you know, because it was a folk tale, so it was public domain. But it was copied by Wes Craven with The Last House on the Left. Now, The Virgin Springs was like an Oscar caliber, classy movie starring Max von Sydow, who went on to play the title character of the Exorcist in The Exorcist. And Last House on the Left was, of course, a grindhouse flick. And almost at the exact same moment, you had Straw Dogs and Deliverance, which were both very mainstream movies with big movie stars like Dustin Hoffman and Burt Reynolds in them. And then you had The Last House on the Left, and The Last House on the Left weirdly almost instantly ghettoized the subgenre of rape revenge films because it was so notorious. It was so inflammatory that, and I love The Last House on the Left instantly, but it was censored to death. There were people who literally threatened to riot in movie theaters where it was playing, and that's not me using literally like some people use literally. I literally almost fainted. Like, no, it literally, there were threats of violence in movie theaters playing that movie. So, The Last House on the Left instantly pushed it into, kind of the sleazoid films. No one else would kind of touch these movies. But there were a few significant ones. They Call Her One Eye, aka, what was the alternate title? Thriller, I think, A Cruel Picture. I like They Call Her One Eye. I think that's a cool title. One of the more significant ones, Abel Ferrara's Miss 45, featured the famous image of the nun with the gun. She's not actually a nun, but she dresses like a nun at the end of the movie. And there were a few other ones, none terribly significant, up to and including the unofficial I Spit on Your Grave sequel-ish. I Spit on Your Grave, I Piss on Your Corpse, I believe was the title of that movie. I could never bring myself to watch it. It just sounded grody. But, yeah, so, and They Call Her One Eye is actually interesting because it's a big favorite of Quentin Tarantino's. He actually loosely based the Daryl Hannah character in the Kill Bill movies, the one-eyed badass that worked for Bill, on the female lead of They Call Her One Eye. And I look forward to watching They Call Her One Eye. I've never seen it before. So anyway, all that aside, I Spit on Your Grave is a very good movie. The primary villain of it, the Johnny who leads the rape, now his kids who you see briefly at the gas station are Myers-Arky's actual kids. And his wife, who you see briefly at the gas station, is absolutely 100% not the woman who plays his wife in I Spit on Your Grave Deja Vu. Not even close. It would be the equivalent of making a sequel to From Dusk Till Dawn, and suddenly George Clooney is played by, I don't know, Chris Hemsworth. It's not even similar. But it's so... Stay focused. Talk about the first one first. So anyway, one of the interesting things about I Spit on Your Grave is that unlike The Last House on the Left, it makes the rapist disturbingly normal. These guys aren't yokels. These guys aren't criminals. These guys are basically small town guys. They're anybody. There's nothing all that specific about them. You have a slow kid who works at a grocery store. You have a couple of unemployed losers who are basically just drinking and doing nothing with their time, and Johnny, a small business owner with 2 children, who served in the military. He wears this little Marines cap, which is supposed to be a nod to that, although he does mention it a couple times throughout the movie. They go fishing, they go to the soda shop. They interact with each other on a very normal level. So the idea that they would do this to this woman is pretty horrifying, and how vicious they are when they do it especially. Now, it is slightly implied that it was a class issue as much as anything, that they felt that because she was from New York City, she was an other. That it was okay because she wasn't part of the town. But these idiots also have no plan, because it's clear after they rape her that they don't really know what to do. It's like, wait, she's seen all our faces. She knows a couple of our names. She knows where a couple of us work. We kind of can't let her go now. But, yeah, so, the mentally handicapped kid fails to kill her as he's instructed to, and it leads to the only real logic bump of the movie, which is that it seems like it's only been a few weeks between the rape and the revenge. This woman was beat to shit. Honestly, I'm almost sure she would have needed a hospital, especially after the bottle thing. That feels like that would have put anyone in a hospital. And the fact that, like the swelling, you could say she's really good with makeup, but still, and you do still see light leftover scratches on her back, but her face was torn to hell. And this actually has some good makeup effects. There's not a lot of them, but like that cut on her cheek, on her chin, It looks like, for all the world, like when you cut at the angle and there's just a skin flap, like it's realistic and it's believable. But and the motorboat scene always got me. Now I finally found out how they did that because I was wondering how a low budget film did that, and it was so easy and obvious that I was shocked that, oh, of course, it was done with a water hose. They just had a water hose blowing air. The boat motor was never turned on. So yeah, I'm an idiot. The castration scene, which is honestly one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen in a movie. It's just, god damn. And that guy, the Johnny, is actually a very respected acting coach now. He's one of the most prestigious acting schools there is. And the funny thing is, he was actually apparently in Playgirl before he was in I Spit on Your Grave. So hey, you never know where life will lead you, apparently. So of course, I Spit on Your Grave was filmed. And then, the controversy erupted. Siskel and Ebert, two most prominent film critics of the time, led just a flat-out war on this movie. Now, they did this with multiple horror flicks. Those guys were assholes. I don't get. I mean, they sucked. They were bad people. Like, honestly, the way they handled this stuff, like with Friday the 13th, they doxed the female lead, Betsy Palmer, Mrs. Voorhees, and I believe the director Sean S. Cunningham also. They were just petty assholes about it. They didn't like these movies, and they thought they should have movies weren't allowed to exist because they didn't like them. So, but I Spit on Your Grave is interesting because it almost certainly would have slid into obscurity because there's no names involved in it. It's not like Last House on the Left where you had Wes Craven go on to be big, or Friday the 13th where you had a big franchise built around it. This was very much a one-off for all involved. So I think this movie would have slid into relative obscurity, if not for the fact that Siskel and Ebert specifically talked about it so much. They accidentally made this movie into a sleeper hit, and this movie was a big video rental. This was massively popular in video stores, and that sort of prolonged its life. Now, it didn't help anyone's career. I mean, basically everyone in this movie, they're not quite one-offs. Most of them had like one other thing, but no one got famous off of this. But yeah, and of course, the director, Miyazaki, and left his wife for the female lead, Camille Keaton. But their relationship was such a failure that they actually they were married and already divorced before the movie was released. They met during production, married after production, and divorced before the film was released, which I believe was 3 years later. So, yeah, I Spit on Your Grave is a great flick. It's got... The pacing is a little iffy in places. That's the only criticism I can really have. This is a very good movie, especially when you consider that this guy hadn't directed anything before. This is such a well-made, assured film. So I'm very impressed with what they accomplished on I Spit on Your Grave. I Spit on Your Grave Deja Vu, though. Well, how bad it is. It's an interesting sort of bad. It's a hyperactive, deranged sort of bad, but it's a bad piece of filmmaking. It's every scene in that movie, practically, almost literally every scene in that movie goes on 5 minutes too long. That's not even an exaggeration. The movie's 2.5 hours. It's a 2.5 hour sequel to an hour and 40-minute movie. Anytime your runtime exceeds the original by that much, start thinking about cutting it back. But yeah, it's got there. If you want to say there's three kinds of acting, there's three kinds of bad acting. There's boring bad acting, which is just people who have no business being in front of a camera. The people who are just like, I walked into the room and saw that my mother had died. It crushed me. Like just people who don't have any ability to emote on film. Then there's the just really unbelievable bad acting where they can't do it. It's just really awkward. It's just like I didn't know. But then there's the last kind of bad acting, and this I would like to call the Nick Cage bad acting. When Nicolas Cage does a bad job in a movie, it's hilarious because it's like, okay, do 3 lines of cocaine, then read these lines of dialogue. Okay, I'm ready to go. Yeah. There is one guy, and I Spit on Your Grave Deja Vu. He's apparently a former BMX bicycle champ, I believe. I think it was bicycle. But he looks like if you went to a meth den and asked, hey, who here has a criminal record for violence? That guy would be him. Just this scrawny, tattooed, long-haired, weird, hyper, bug-eyed freak who just is at 10 all the time, but he's not the lead character, so it doesn't get annoying in the way that some overacting can, bad overacting can. The Johnny's wife is supposed to be the villain, and if you look at I Spit on Your Grave, the original one, Johnny's wife, the leader of the rapist gang from the first film, and she's out for revenge in the second movie, should be the same age as Camille Keaton. Now, Camille Keaton does return in this movie, so that follows that she should be about 65, 70, somewhere in there. But the age is clearly dramatically different. So she didn't age, but Camille Keaton did. And the age is just off all over the place in this movie. There is no telling what year or how long is supposed to have elapsed between I Spit on Your Grave and Deja Vu. And again, the acting is just phenomenally bad from everyone except the two female leads, to the point where you really start to feel bad for Camille Keaton and Jamie Bernadette, who's the other female lead. She's the one on the poster. She's the daughter of the character from the original movie, Jennifer Hill. And spoilers if it matters, Deja Vu, this movie's god-awful. She's the daughter of one of the rapists, and that's a running theme throughout the movie, is who was she the daughter of? Well, if you saw the first movie, she could really only be the daughter of Johnny, because Johnny's the only one who vaginally penetrated her to completion. So yeah, she's Johnny's daughter. That's the only one that makes sense. I mean, I guess technically she could be Matthews, but that's highly unlikely. So, the acting is so bad, and I say the acting's horrible. The acting is the kind of horrible where the director is just constantly saying, "Go bigger, go bigger, go bigger." It really kind of gives you an appreciation for good overacting. You know, like a Jack Nicholson at his height, or an Al Pacino, or like that kind of thing. Like, good overacting is really entertaining and really kind of catches your attention. Bad overacting is either hilarious or annoying, and in this movie it's mostly funny. Now, that said, I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu is not a movie that I will ever watch again. I watched it once when it first came out. I watched it on the Blu-ray with the commentary by Joe Bob. I'm never going to watch this movie again. It's just too bad. And it's too long. It's too long. It's stupid. So, the plot of the movie is that Jennifer Hill decided, after however many years, because it's not really clear how long it's supposed to have been, to write a book about her experience in the first movie called I Spit on Their Graves. It's kind of like the title, but not really. It's stupid. And she's also admitting to first-degree homicide all throughout this book. There's no statute of limitations on that shit. She'd have been arrested. But you can't there's a thing, they used to call it the Son of Sam law. The Son of Sam, the 44 caliber killer in New York, the one that says his neighbor's dog told him to kill people. And it was that you can't profit from your crimes. So even if you assume that she may not have been convicted, it's still a crime. So I don't think she could have sold this book. Like legally, I don't think it's possible that it could have been published. But so anyway, and her daughter is this famous supermodel. Now, at first I thought, Jamie Bernadette, she's a very pretty woman. She's very pretty. I've seen her in some other stuff. 420 Massacre, The Sixth Friend. I've seen her in a few things. I like her. But she's a little... At first I was thinking, well, isn't she a little old to be a supermodel? And it's like, well, no, because she's supposed to be a very rich and successful supermodel. So obviously she's been doing it for a while. She's not just starting out. So that hand waved that away from me. So they get abducted in the conveniently empty parking lot of a very nice restaurant, even though it's broad daylight. So they get abducted. They get yelled at a lot. There's a lot of biblical references, which is interesting because Meyer Zarki is Jewish, and all the biblical references are Christian. Now, I mean, in the original flick, they do briefly reference Christianity when she goes into the church and apologizes to God. And then Meyer Zarki has his little cameo as the priest. And in this movie, he does the same thing. They go into a much less impressive church. Because I would actually think this movie would have a higher budget than the first one. So I'm not sure why they're in this cheeseball, tiny little nothing of a church. But whatever. And he's once again playing the organ. But in the original movie, he's dressed like a priest. In this movie, in Deja Vu, he's dressed like a monk. Like literally, he's dressed like he should be hanging out with Robin Hood or some damn thing. So there's a lot of Christianity references, and all these people are supposed to be related in some way to the original rapist, and they're getting revenge. Like, I'm Matthew's dad. Well, no, you're not, because you would be like, what, Matthew was at least 20 in the original movie, which would mean you would have to be presumably at least say 16 years older than him, so that's 36. With 40 years of aging, you'd be in your 70s, not your 50s. And they have this old couple that are the grandparent, like they'd have to be in their 90s. It's stupid all the way around. There's nothing in this movie that made sense. It's rambling. It's unintentionally funny. There's one scene where the skinny meth head looking guy is menacing Jennifer with an aluminum circle that I guess I'm supposed to believe is sharp, although there's another scene where the leader, Johnny's wife, has a knife that looks about as real as something you buy at Spirit Halloween, and she's up against her throat like, oh, I'm going to cut your head off. Yeah, no, you're not, because that thing's made out of plastic. The makeup effects in this incidentally are bad. Again, it makes you feel bad, because you want to like Camille Keaton, and she is good in the movie, even though she's not really being given good direction, so there are a few places where, honestly, it feels like the shot just shouldn't have been used. And Jamie Bernadette is going for it. I mean, she is really hardcore in this movie, and it's one of those things where you wish the movie had been better for the actress or the actor. In this case, Camille Keaton and Jamie Bernadette deserved a better film. But it sucks. It's nonsensical. It's kind of funny for a bad movie night, but even then, it's really too long for that, because a good bad movie shouldn't go much past 90 minutes. And like I said, this movie's way north of 2 hours. Now, the documentary is good for the diehard superfans. Growing Up with I Spit on Your Grave. It's directed by Miyazaki son, who had the brief cameo in the original and the sequel, because he plays the same role in the sequel as Johnny's son. He's a brief cameo in both movies, and he directed it. And you get a lot. I mean, it really is just a comprehensive history of the first movie, with some mentions of the remake and the sequels to the remake, which I personally found the remake to be kind of blah. It's a lot more mean-spirited, which isn't a bad thing. I like a good brutal movie. Cannibal Holocaust is one of my favorite movies. But it's also a lot more stupid. It was very influenced by Saw, and because of that, it doesn't have the realism or the impact of the original movie. So it's a time killer. Then I Spit on Your Grave, the sequel to the remake, I thought was just complete in one ear and out the other. I barely remember anything about it, and by the time they made the third one, I didn't care anymore, so I never saw the third one. But will there be an I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu sequel, a third movie? Honestly, I'd probably watch it if Jamie Bernadette starred in it. If she wasn't, then I probably won't bother, because it just sucked too bad. But it is a cool little box set that I have right over here. I said I burned through all the special features. Came with all those cool little extras like the posters and the magnets. A little booklet with it too that I read, which is pretty redundant, honestly, but it does give you some cool. It actually has a really cool thing here of the Italian poster for I Spit on Your Grave. Like, I actually thought that was a pretty awesome poster. But yeah, it's a cool little thing to have for superfans. It's kind of on the pricey side. This was $65, ordered through RoninFlix.com. I don't know if you can get it anywhere else. It's not on Amazon. But Ronin, like the samurai, RoninFlix.com, it's worth it for diehard fans. But see, the thing is that you can't get the Blu-ray, I don't think, anywhere else if I Spit on Your Grave, unless you're willing to spend more than this cost for the out-of-print Blu-ray that came out about 10 years ago. So almost if you want this thing in your solid media collection, you have to. But use your discretion. I love the first one, though. Bye.